Ever get that feeling like you want to really grasp something big, something that's shaped the way we tell stories, even today, but you don't exactly have weeks to spend digging through research?
I know exactly what you mean.
Well, that's exactly why we do this show. So today we're diving deep into one of the oldest stories ever told,
Oh yeah, this one's a classic.
the Epic of Gilgamesh.
It's not just an ancient tale, it's like the foundation for so much of the literature that came after it. We're talking about a narrative that originated thousands of years ago.
Thousands.
Yeah, in Mesopotamia, and we still have it today because they captured it on clay tablets.
Like tablets, wow.
It's a direct line to how these early civilizations thought about the big questions.
Like holding history in your hands, it's amazing. And that's exactly what we're going to try to do for you today in this deep dive.
We'll unpack it all.
So we're looking at the Akkadian version.
Which actually builds on even older Sumerian poems.
So it's a story with its own history.
Layers and layers.
Exactly. And our mission today is to pull out the essential insights, like the world it came from.
The historical context.
Yeah, the twists and turns of the plot.
All the drama.
The timeless themes that still resonate with us today.
The things that make it a classic.
And ultimately why this epic is still so significant thousands of years later.
It's going to be a journey.
Are you ready to explore?
Let's go.
So to understand Gilgamesh, we have to start by picturing Mesopotamia.
Often called the Cradle of Civilization.
And in that region, one of the earliest urban centers was Uruk.
A bustling city.
And this is where our legendary hero Gilgamesh actually lived and ruled.
He wasn't just a figment of someone's imagination.
He was a real king, wasn't he?
Yeah, ruled Uruk around 2700 BCE.
It's wild to think that an actual historical figure could inspire a story that's lasted this long.
It's a testament to the power of the story itself.
Totally. So over the centuries, obviously, accounts of his life evolved and became, embellished into this epic poem we know today.
It's like a game of telephone across generations.
But here's what I find really fascinating. The most complete version of the Epic of Gilgamesh that we have today didn't actually come from those earliest Sumerian times.
No, it comes much later.
It's from the library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal.
7th century BCE.
So that's almost 2,000 years after Gilgamesh lived.
The story was passed down and retold for centuries.
That's incredible. Okay, so we've got this historical context, this ancient city of Uruk. Now let's dive into the epic itself. When we first meet Gilgamesh, he's this incredibly powerful ruler.
A demigod, actually, 2/3 divine, 1/3 human.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, but he's not exactly the most beloved king.
Why's that?
Well, initially, despite his strength and wisdom, Gilgamesh is depicted as a bit of a tyrant.
A tyrant.
He's got all this energy, but it's misdirected, and he ends up oppressing the people he's supposed to be protecting.
So not a great start.
Not exactly, but this is important because it sets up a need for change in Gilgamesh, and that change comes in the form of Enkidu.
Enkidu, the wild man, a true man of nature. Tell us about him. How does he come into the picture?
Well, the gods hear the cries of the people suffering under Gilgamesh's rule, and they decide to create a counterbalance, someone to challenge him.
That makes sense.
And so they create Enkidu, who starts his life not in a city like Uruk, but out in the wild, roaming the plains with the animals.
What a contrast. You've got the sophisticated, powerful ruler of a city, and then this untamed being of nature.
Exactly, and that contrast is key to their relationship.
So how does Enkidu go from the wild to the world of Gilgamesh?
That's where Shamhat comes in.
Shamhat, the temple priestess.
She's a fascinating character. She encounters Enkidu and introduces him to the ways of humans, things like food and shelter and companionship.
So she's like a bridge between the wild and civilization.
Exactly. Her role is pivotal, and it shows us how important culture and societal norms were to the ancient Mesopotamians.
That makes sense. So Enkidu leaves the wild and travels to Uruk. What happens when he finally meets Gilgamesh?
It's not exactly a friendly hello. Their first encounter is a wrestling match, a pure clash of power and strength.
So they just go at it.
They do, and what's really interesting is that neither of them truly defeats the other.
The draw.
Yeah, but instead of continuing to fight, this intense physical confrontation leads to something unexpected, a deep and lasting friendship.
I love that.
It's this bond that becomes the emotional core of the entire epic, and it changes both of them for the better.
That's powerful. And it's this friendship that leads them on their first big adventure together, the journey to the cedar forest. What was the goal of that trip?
Well, driven by their desire for fame and glory, Gilgamesh proposes that they go to this distant forest and defeat its guardian Humbaba.
Who is this Humbaba guy?
He's a monstrous being appointed by the gods to protect the forest.
Sounds intense.
Oh, he's terrifying. But Gilgamesh and Enkidu are determined to prove themselves, so they set out on this quest, and with the help of the sun god Shamash, they actually succeed.
They kill Humbaba.
They do. They fell the sacred cedar trees and defeat the monster.
That's a big win.
Yeah, it establishes their reputation as heroes.
But I've noticed that in a lot of these ancient stories, big victories often have consequences.
You're right about that. Their triumph in the cedar forest doesn't go unnoticed by the gods.
What happens?
Well, defeating Humbaba, a creature put there by the gods, is seen as an act of hubris.
Hubris.
Yeah, it's like they overstepped their bounds and defied the natural order. It disrupts the balance between humans and the divine.
And the gods don't like that.
Not one bit, and this sets off a chain of events that will lead to tragedy later on.
Oh boy. Okay, so speaking of divine drama, let's talk about Ishtar. She's a major player in this story, right?
Oh, absolutely. She's the goddess of love and war.
Powerful combination.
Right, and after Gilgamesh and Enkidu return from the cedar forest, Ishtar enters the picture with a proposition for Gilgamesh.
What kind of proposition?
A marriage proposition.
Wow, she wants to marry Gilgamesh.
She does. She sees him in a new light after his victory over Humbaba.
But what does Gilgamesh think about that?
In a surprising move, he rejects her.
He rejects the goddess of love and war.
He does, and he's pretty blunt about it, too. He brings up her past relationships and how her previous lovers met unfortunate ends.
He calls her out.
Yeah, he basically tells her she's bad news.
That's bold. I can't imagine a goddess taking rejection well.
You're right about that. Ishtar is furious and deeply insulted.
So what does she do?
She goes to her father, Anu, the supreme god, and demands revenge.
This can't be good.
It isn't. She asks Anu to unleash the bowl of heaven on Uruk as punishment for Gilgamesh's rejection.
The bull of heaven, what's that all about?
This is a monstrous bull, a divine beast that's sent to wreak havoc on the city.
Oh no.
Yeah, it causes major destruction. But Gilgamesh and Enkidu once again team up and fight the bull.
Do they win?
Did they manage to kill the bull of heaven?
So they've defied the gods twice now. First by killing Humbaba, and now by slaying this divine bull.
Exactly, and the consequences are about to catch up with them.
What happened?
The gods meet and decide that one of the heroes must pay the ultimate price for these transgressions.
Oh no, who do they choose?
Enkidu.
Oh, that's awful.
He's condemned to die a slow and painful death from a wasting sickness.
That's so sad after everything they've been through together. How does Enkidu handle this?
Well, as he gets weaker, he starts having these vivid and terrifying dreams about the underworld.
The underworld?
The ancient Mesopotamian version of the afterlife, and it's not a pleasant place. It's dark and bleak and full of suffering.
That's heavy stuff.
It is, and it shows us what the ancient Mesopotamians believed happened after death.
It really makes you think about their worldview.
Yeah, and Enkidu's suffering and eventual death have a huge impact on Gilgamesh.
I can only imagine the grief he must have felt.
It's described in the epic as overwhelming. He goes through these elaborate mourning rituals.
He was losing his best friend.
The one person who truly understood him.
And for Gilgamesh, who's always seemed invincible, this is the first time he's truly confronted with death.
It's a turning point for him.
It changes his entire perspective.
Yeah, and this fear of death, this new awareness of his own mortality, leads him on his next big quest.
The search for eternal life.
Exactly. Seeing Enkidu die makes Gilgamesh desperate to avoid the same fate, so he sets out on a dangerous journey to find Utnapishtim.
Who's Utnapishtim?
He's the only mortal who's been granted immortality by the gods.
And Gilgamesh thinks he can learn the secret to eternal life from him.
That's his hope. His motivation has completely shifted from seeking glory to escaping death.
This journey sounds intense.
Oh, it's epic. He travels through treacherous mountains, across vast deserts. He even has to cross the waters of death.
The waters of death, that sounds honored.
It's like a boundary between the world of living and the world of the dead.
So what happens when he finally reaches Utnapishtim?
Well, Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh the story of how he gained immortality.
How do you do it?
It involves a great flood sent by the gods to wipe out humanity.
A flood.
Yeah, Utnapishtim and his wife were warned ahead of time and told to build an ark.
Like Noah's Ark.
Exactly. It's a very similar story, and it suggests a shared ancient Near Eastern origin for the flood myth.
That's fascinating. So Utnapishtim and his wife survived the flood, and the gods rewarded them with immortality.
Right, but he makes it clear to Gilgamesh that this was a one-time thing. It's not something that can be repeated.
So there's no hope for Gilgamesh.
He learns the hard truth that death is inevitable for all mortals.
That must have been a crushing blow after such a long and difficult journey.
It was, but there's a twist.
A twist?
Yeah. Napishtim tells Gilgamesh about a plant at the bottom of the sea, a plant that can restore youth.
So not immortality, but a second chance at youth.
Exactly, a glimmer of hope.
Does he get it?
He does.
No.
Gilgamesh dives down to the bottom of the sea and retrieves the plant.
Amazing. But knowing these ancient stories, I have a feeling it doesn't work out the way he planned.
You're right. As Gilgamesh is resting by a pool, exhausted from his quest, a serpent comes out of the water and steals the plant.
No way.
Yeah, it devours the plant and sheds its skin.
So even the chance to regain his youth is taken away.
It's a powerful symbol of renewal and rebirth, but it's something that's ultimately beyond Gilgamesh's reach.
What a heartbreaking ending.
It is, but it's also a turning point for Gilgamesh.
How so?
Well, he returns to Uruk, defeated but changed by his experiences.
In what way?
He's no longer obsessed with immortality. He's learned to accept his mortality, and he finds meaning in his accomplishments as king.
He sees his legacy.
Yeah, he realizes that his city, Uruk, is his lasting contribution to the world.
It's a bittersweet ending, but also kind of hopeful.
Exactly. It's about finding meaning in life, despite our limitations.
So looking at the Epic of Gilgamesh as a whole, what are the big takeaways, the themes that still resonate with us today?
There are so many powerful themes. The first is the importance of friendship.
Like the bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu.
Exactly. It's a transformative relationship that shapes both of their lives.
And then there's the theme of death.
Yeah, the epic really grapples with the idea of mortality and the human struggle to come to terms with it.
It's something we all have to face eventually.
And the epic also explores the relationship between humans and the divine.
The gods are powerful, but also unpredictable.
They can be helpful, but also dangerous.
And what about Enkidu's journey from the wild to civilization?
That's another key theme. It shows the transition from a natural state to a more civilized way of life.
And it raises questions about what we gain and what we lose in that process.
Exactly. And the flood narrative is fascinating too.
Yeah, it's an early example of a story that appears in many different cultures.
It speaks to a shared human experience.
So the Epic of Gilgamesh has had a huge impact on literature and culture.
Absolutely. Scholars have found parallels between it and later works like Homer's Odyssey and even the Bible.
Wow. So it's influenced some of the most famous stories ever told.
It really has, and its rediscovery in the 19th century was a major event.
Why is that?
Because it gave us this incredible insight into ancient Mesopotamian culture.
A window into the past.
Exactly. It showed us how they thought about the world, their beliefs, their fears, their hopes.
It's amazing to think that a story from thousands of years ago can still speak to us today.
That's the power of great storytelling.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that the Epic of Gilgamesh is more than just an old story. It's a profound exploration of what it means to be human.
It's about friendship loss, the search for meaning, the things that we still struggle with today.
It's a story that stood the test of time.
And it continues to offer us valuable insights into the human condition.
So to you, our listener, as you go about your day, we want you to consider this. How does Gilgamesh's struggle with mortality and his eventual acceptance of his earthly role resonate with your own life?
Do his challenges and triumphs offer any guidance for your own journey?
And was his final recognition of his city, his legacy, a form of triumph in itself, a different kind of immortality?
It's something to think about.
Food for thought from an epic that's thousands of years old.
The Epic of Gilgamesh.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.